morning, good morning, good morning. Hope everybody was able to get some rest last night. I know it was a tough one for those of us here in Charleston County, especially after the school board meeting. But as I stated in my post this morning, the commentary must continue because people can't just be upset and angry at what happened last night. You got to be motivated to take the steps. And so what I want to talk with some folks about today, this morning, is the fact that we're going to be having some uncomfortable conversations. What happened in CCSD last night was totally predictable, and it was predicted by quite a few people. And if you paid attention and you understand how things work in the district, you could see this coming. Those of us who watched almost a year ago what happened in Berkeley County could see this coming. And the fact that there are so many people clutching their proverbial pearls and hand-wringing is disheartening because we saw this. It's not like the Moms for Liberty playbook is some masterful, agenda that's hard to decipher. They let us know what they were about. They did. And unfortunately, there are quite a few people who still seem to be in denial. So I want to help folks with a history lesson, okay? It is 2023 right now. Go back about 9 years. So 2014, 2015, give or take, right? Dr. Nancy McGinley was our previous superintendent. There was an incident that took place regarding the academic magnet football team. That particular year, the academic magnet football team was having somewhat of a successful football season. But also, part of the process of them celebrating, okay, they had a very controversial process. There were watermelons. For those of you who are on this call and you remember this, Watermelon Gate. There were watermelons that they would have at the games, and they would have the names of black schools on them. And they would crush these watermelons, and the players would make what many called monkey noises. That same year, the academic magnet football team, which was, from my understanding, and again, I may be incorrect, but from my understanding, that team was majority white, and I think they had one black player, right? So this ceremony that they were doing, this celebration, which was very much so controversial, and I would say racist, was brought to the attention of district officials, right? By a board member at the time, Mr. Michael Miller, right? And because it had been brought to his attention by others, right? So then began this investigation on the part of CCSD, Mr. Lou Martin and Dr. McGinley and others. They basically sat there and investigated to find out what was going on, what was happening, all of that, right? Sorry about this. Make sure my thing is up here. So basically what happened was they sat there and found out that it was in fact racial. And so the coach at the time, which was Bud Walpole, who had been a coach at Middleton, and by some accounts had kind of a suspect history regarding race and whatnot, he was suspended from his role as the head coach, okay? So he wasn't fired. He was suspended from his role as head coach. Let me put this back in here. So Bud Walpole gets suspended. That triggers in CCSD, this extreme backlash on the part of the parents and supporters of Academic Magnet football team and Academic Magnet High School. Now, for context, it should be noted to those who are watching this live that the vast majority of the parents of students who attend Academic Magnet are from Mount Pleasant, because a significant percentage, the vast majority of the students who attend Academic Magnet also reside in Mount Pleasant. So after Bud Walpole was suspended from his duties as head coach, not suspended, not fired, there was a petition created to reinstate Bud Walpole. That petition, within 24 to 48 hours, got 3,000 signatures. And that's pretty significant for a local situation, okay? So let me say that. Also, as a result of this petition, the then CCSD school board took it upon themselves to then begin the process for the removal of Dr. Nancy McGinley, okay? So follow me, we're tracking. This is less than 10 years ago, okay? And I need people to understand, really, that what we are seeing right now has always been there, okay? While the title is Moms for Liberty, the face is racism. And please understand me when I say this, that a lot of this that is happening right now was also, again, predicted. So that same timeline, Dr. Nancy McGinley is gone, right? She's ousted. The petition to save her barely garnered 600 signatures, right? A lot of your now prominent Charlestonians who had once stood beside her abandoned this woman because she dared to speak up and take action to address a grievance to Black people. And I want you to hold on to that. I want you to listen to what I'm telling you. Hold on to that. So Dr. Nancy McGinley is gone. There's a vacuum. The chief academic officer at the time was Dr. Lisa Herring. In logical terms, in logical progression, you would put someone who has a grasp of the academic environment into the position of interim superintendent, don't you think? But not CCSD. Because going back to Academic Magnet SOA, Dr. Herring had a daughter who attended SOA. There was an incident involving her daughter and another white student in which there was a tweet made by that student, the white student, that was disparaging and racially charged. The student basically, I believe, got suspended or expelled. I forget exactly what the consequence was. I do know that there was an issue with that case and everything, right? So anyway, so Dr. Herring, who would have, in a logical world, been the best candidate and the no-brainer to put in the position of interim, because again, this happened with Dr. McGinley being removed probably October, November-ish. All right. So I don't know what people are doing, but anyway, so then you would have thought that it would have made sense to put the chief academic officer in that position. Well, once again, Charleston at its finest and racism rearing its ugly head, instead of putting Dr. Herring as the sole superintendent, this Black woman Charleston County School Board voted to make her a co-superintendent with then Chief Financial Officer Michael Bobby. Okay? Now, there are some people who never questioned that. People like myself did. There were a lot of silence. There were lots of silence when this happened. And the reason why I suspect it was because the parents of students at SOA Academic Magnet all decided that they did not want to have someone that they thought would potentially open up a can of worms and investigate why one of the top schools in Charleston County and the nation had such prevalence in racial incidents and issues. For those who don't know, Academic Magnet has long been one of those schools that, while it is a jewel of academia, it is not very diverse, and it is not a school that has been known for being welcoming to students who don't fit a certain profile, right? Now, going back to this. So now we're back almost 9 years ago. So Dr. Nancy McGinley is removed for standing up for Black students and the Black community. Dr. Lisa Herring is denied being able to ascend to interim superintendent. All right? So we go through. For the most part, during that time frame, in my opinion, CCSD deferred more to Michael Bobby, a white man, than they ever did to Dr. Herring, a Black woman, an accomplished Black woman. Okay, let me say this, an accomplished Black woman, a Black woman who left CCSD, went to Birmingham, Alabama, had tremendous success there with their school district, and came to Atlanta and had tremendous success there. However, she is now ascended to another position and is an advisor to the current U.S. Secretary of Education. So that tells you what her credentials are, her pedigree is. But CCSD, in its infinite wisdom, did not want to put this woman in place. It should also be noted that as a result of the Academic Magnet incident, there was a commission created for exploring diversity, equity, and inclusion, because apparently we have a problem with that. That commission and the individual that was hired, Mr. Gerard Bishop, were hamstrung at every turn, okay? There are board members and people walking around Charleston County right now who did everything in their power to make sure that Mr. Bishop and this commission were not effective. And the same thing is happening, and I'll get into that in another part. But, so let's look at where we are. Nancy McGinley fired for standing up for Black people. Dr. Lisa Herring denied interim superintendent position. All right. Oh, yes. Thank you, Audrey. She not only was denied as a chief academic officer, she was a deputy superintendent. So Dr. Lisa Herring was more than qualified. All right. I remember when the decision was made and people were trying to justify the co-superintendent situation with Michael Bobby, someone said, oh, well, he taught math in high school or something. And that's why people like me always call out racism. Here you have someone with the credential, okay, the credential in education, a Black woman, accomplished Black woman. But still, it's not enough for the white majority, okay? So then, fast forward, we go through, so this is about 2014, 2015. 2015 happens. Walter Scott happens in April. In June, Mother Emanuel massacre happens. While all of this is going on, there are backroom conversations happening, meetings happening for the superintendent, right? The Black community asked that the search and process of getting a new superintendent at least be put on hold while the Black community, who was dealing with a tragedy of epic proportions, right? Because in the Mother Emanuel tragedy, there were CCSD employees that were lost. This Dr. DePayne doctor, she tragically was lost. But the white majority of the CCSD board plowed through anyway. Okay, this is 2015, summer. They make the announcement that Dr. Jarita Postlewaite is going to be the new superintendent. Keep in mind now, we have a tragedy of epic proportions, unprecedented at the time. Okay, right here in Charleston, the Black community said, can you give us some grace while we gather ourselves to figure out what's going on, because we want to be a part of this process too, right? The Black community said that. And the white majority and white power brokers in this district said, we don't care. Instead, what happened, or what began to happen, was this game of playing with the Black community, this game of trying to placate the Black community, getting and hiring Black people to help make that superintendent's entry into the community more palpable. My first interaction with Dr. Jarita Postlewaite was her first meeting at Burke High School in January of 2016, right? January of 2016. In January of 2016, Dr. Jarita Postlewaite sat there at Burke High School at the podium and stated, and for those who don't know, I believe at that time she was coming from the ACT. So she wasn't coming from another school district. She was coming from being a VP of something at the ACT, the same ACT that creates the test and things of that nature, right? All right. She stood at the podium at Burke High School and stated that in her experience, there were 3 ways to turn around failing inner city schools. Listen to that. Failing inner city schools. For those who don't know, that's Black schools, okay? I am not sugarcoating anything for anybody. You're going to get all of this in its raw, unfiltered form. She stated that, in her opinion, charter schools, public-private partnerships, and public school operators were the 3 ways to turn around failing inner city schools. And all of her speech was basically alluding to what she, as the new superintendent of this district, was going to do. She said that at the same time that a public school operator by the name of New Tech was pitching their proposal to enter into Burke High School in a partnership, right? At that meeting, there were maybe about 50 or so community members, right? Diverse crowd, school district employees, but community members. And at that time, the price tag for this initiative was $140,000. And the community said, when asked, do you want this for Burke High School? They were like, no, we don't want this, because we would much rather try to figure out a way to do something that does not cost but benefits the students. That was said January of 2016. Okay? Following me, right? What I want people to understand is later that summer, Burke High School was pulled into New Tech. All right? I also want people to understand that during Jarita Postlewaite's tenure, right, we got to see what is now termed the Coalition for Kids initiative. That's another story for another part of this series that I'm going to do. But also, Jarita Postlewaite began her campaign of doing what she was brought here to do, which is to disrupt the public education system and enact the changes that would allow those who were seeking. And again, I need people to understand there are people who are seeking to destroy the public education system for their own benefit, right? Now, as I'm talking, I just want to let folks know I'm also being a chauffeur this morning. I take my nephews to school because I am invested in our public education system in addition to being an employee. Good morning, guys. Good morning. All right. Uncle AJ is going live because he's trying to protect y'all and y'all school system, okay? All right. Huh? Trying to protect you guys and your school system because they're doing you wrong. So, back to what I was saying. So, that's what Jarita Postlewaite says. In her tenure that same year, 2016, give or take, Lincoln High School, I believe that summer, came up for closure. In fact, there were two schools that during that time that came up. Lincoln High School was one, and Jane Edwards. The rationale that was given for the closure was that it was under-enrolled, and the district felt that the resources used for that school could be better put elsewhere, right? Now, I want you to think about that. We all know where Lincoln is. Lincoln was majority black, okay? Historically, it had been majority black. All right? So now, you got Jarita Postlewaite, the new superintendent, here. You got Lincoln High School. And something that happened during that time that I don't think a lot of people remember is Michael Miller, who's board member at that time, stated that the district had made a promise when this situation came up before that if Lincoln High School or any of the schools that were in danger of closure, because there was something called a rural school compact. I've yet to find it, but I'm still looking for it. But basically what that said was that if there was an issue with these schools potentially being threatened with closure again, the school district would make sure that they did everything in their power to address whatever grievances. Obviously, that did not happen, and Lincoln High School was closed. I know this because I was in the boardroom when the vote was taken, all right? And I'm telling you all this because this is the context that people need to understand when they are looking at what's happening now. I see a lot of people hand-wringing. I see a lot of people questioning, oh, how could this happen? What is the justification? Black people in Charleston County School District have seen this for decades, okay? We have seen this for decades. I've been with the district for 12 years. I have seen this, all right? So please don't get it twisted. As critical as I am of Moms for Liberty, this is Charleston. This is what happens when you allow a white power structure to dominate the educational and academic landscape, and what white people want is the only thing that's considered. Because they closed Lincoln, kept Jane Edwards open. That's significant. Because then, 2 years later, Garrett High School was also closed. During that time, also, it should be noted that attempts to come for Burke, attempts to come for E.B. Ellington, again, 2 all-black schools, all took place. This is the history, folks. This is before Moms for Liberty. So for people who may not have been around during that time, you're getting a history lesson, a very condensed one, but a significant one. See, because I've long said that the seeds of what you see with Moms for Liberty were planted in fertile soil. All right? So now we're still in the administration of Jarita Postlewaite. Got all this stuff going on. And there's a lot of people, lot of people cheering her on. They are cheering her on, saying that what she is doing is necessary. Okay? All right? Then enter Coalition for Kids, a dark money group, and I don't even call it dark money. Let's just be honest. It's white people with money. Okay? Ain't nothing dark about it. It's been in place forever. All right? White people with money feel like they're entitled to shape the world in whatever ways they see fit. So it's not dark money. Stop saying that, all right? It's just that white people create systems where you can't tell it's them. That's cowardice. If you truly believe in something and you believe in the cause and you believe that your investment is worthy, then why not let the world know that that's what you're invested in? But that's a conversation for a different day. So Coalition for Kids comes on the scene around 2018, right? Yeah, 2018, I believe. You see them, they have this slick, glossy campaign of they're going to fix public education. And I want people to listen to me when I say this. Public education has been being fixed for 30 to 40 years. And I need you to understand that when you hear a lot of people say that, they're not trying to fix it. They're trying to continue destroying it so they can make it and take the resources for themselves. That's what's happening. Look around the country. Okay? So Coalition for Kids comes in, and then they have all of this immediate built-in support. This support allegedly that's bipartisan, that's diverse. It's a lot of black people initially that were on this support list that suddenly became non-existent. A lot of prominent black people. I remember reaching out to some folks because some folks reached out to me and they were asking me, was I aware? Because even back then, I was a passionate advocate for public education, right? So Coalition for Kids comes on the scene and starts telling everybody that they know what's best for our public schools. They know, right? Not you, not me, the voters, not the people in the schools. They know. This random group of people who have the attitude that they need to come in and destroy the structure of public education, which impacts tens of thousands of students and thousands of teachers and staff. They know what's what. This money group, right? Funded by some of your most well-known people. Okay? And of course, people throw names out like Ben Navarro. Anita Zucker was affiliated with them as well. But also know that their board included some prominent lawyers and other people here in Charleston that supported them. Mayor Riley, former Mayor Riley, supported them. Now, again, maybe they thought, oh, this is what public education needs, so I'm going to support this. Whatever. I do know this, that Coalition for Kids, in my opinion, was the Trojan horse that opened us up to what we're seeing right now with Moms for Liberty. Okay? In fact, one of the board members for Coalition for Kids, I forgot the gentleman's name, is the fiance of current U.S. Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Okay? So, again, this is all in Charleston County. This is in the last 10 years. Now, why is Coalition for Kids important in this conversation about Moms for Liberty? Because Coalition for Kids disrupted the process of how we all vote for our local school board. They began the process of running a slate. They began the process of endorsing candidates and putting money and resources into them. And that's significant because for the first time, probably in the longest time, you had outside money pushing for a local school board race. And I'm not talking about a little bit of money. I'm talking about so much so, they, from what I understand, they were telling candidates they were telling people, all you have to do is just agree to run, and they would do everything. They were hiring local political strategists, some of whom their names I will reveal later because, in my opinion, they play both sides of the fence. Because some of those same people that ran those candidates that claim not to be extremists on the right-wing side are silent as mice pissing on cotton right now with what's happening. Okay? And when Coalition for Kids opened the door for running candidates on a slate and influencing our local school board elections to the point where they made it their brand, right? They ran these slick commercials. You know, they were connected with some of the top people in our area, people who, in my opinion, didn't even have any legitimacy in the arena of public education. They didn't do anything, but yet still they lent their political or social capital to this organization that was not vetted, right? And then they won, right? This is still under Dr. Jarita Postlewaite. Okay. In the process of the Coalition for Kids dominated school board, then came this initiative called Shared Future and Mission Critical, right? Sounds again, slick marketing. Shared Future was a nonprofit entity created for Charleston County School District that was supposedly to address some of the long-standing issues of the district. Now, there's still debate, and I don't have it in for certainty, but there's still debate as to the legitimacy of this organization, how it was started, what it was started with, i.e. public funds. But that entity started, it convened community stakeholders. And anytime I hear that, my ears perk up because I'm like, what communities and who are these stakeholders? Because if these are people that are not on the ground, if these are people who are not getting their hands dirty in the work of improving our public education system and our communities, they're not a stakeholder. They're a placeholder. So Shared Future convened this group, right? That was supposed to be indicative. I think it was a cross section of the folks, and they held these meetings where they had these visioning sessions and all this. Now, this is what I want to say. I have a business now, consulting firm that does community engagement. So I understand the landscape. Okay. I understand the language that gets used, you know, when they're trying to do things and being very disingenuous about it. So these visioning sessions were basically inviting the public in and saying, if you could fix public education, how would you do it? And they gave you these scenarios. The scenarios that they gave ultimately became what is now known as mission critical. They used what they claim to be the public comments from from Shared Future public meetings to then gear towards Mission Critical. And for those who don't know, Mission Critical was a series of actions taken by the district to quote unquote address some things. One of them was the diversity initiative for Buste Academy. This is hilarious. And this is why I'm looking at certain people sideways. Certain people who will say, I'm not racist. I believe I vote Democrat. People who had Bernie Sanders signs in their yard. People who, you know, will be like, yeah, I voted for Barack Obama, but they don't look like me. You know, the mission critical action regarding Buste Academy basically was that they were opening up high quality seats. For those of you who don't know, Buste Academy is a magnet school that requires an entrance test to get in because it's an IB school, International Baccalaureate. So it requires an entrance exam for students to be able to be in. If you go back in history, though, it wasn't always that way. when it was significantly black. It started out as a black school in Charleston County. But again, that's a conversation for another day. So this action, this mission critical action, again, still under Jarita Postaway. Now we're in the Coalition for Kids era. Basically, Butte Academy opened up some more seats because there were complaints that parents were saying their children wouldn't get in. Now, I want you to hear me when I say this. Most of those complaints came from white parents. It came from parents downtown. Again, Butte Academy, just like Academic Magnet and SOA, had a significant percentage of students who were not downtown. All right? Now, are there some black students in Butte Academy? Yes. But was it black students clamoring to get, black families clamoring to get their kids in the Butte Academy? No. But they used the terminology of diversity because that was a catch-all, and that was the way, in my opinion, that they could get public support around this initiative, right? At the same time, give or take, Memminger Elementary had won its certification as an IB school as well. That's significant for what I'm going to say next. So, mission critical, Butte Academy Diversity Initiative, there's a vote in the school board about the motion to increase the number of available seats at Butte Academy for students who attend D20 schools. For those who don't know, D20 is Constituent District 20, downtown Peninsula schools, right? So that was what this initiative was supposed to do, right? It was supposed to increase access to seats at Butte Academy for students who were who attended downtown schools. Why do I know that? Because that's what the document said. That's what the rhetoric was. That's what the conversations was. Because I heard it from many of the white parents at the time, right? So that's where the campaign was. The day of the vote, the evening of the vote, I should say, Dr. Postaway pushed the motion out there. I forgot. No, somebody else put the motion out there. I forgot who it was. I got to go back and look at the video. The motion was initially to increase the number of high-quality seats at Butte Academy for students attending D20 schools. The motion got changed. Wording matters. The motion got changed to increase the number of high-quality seats for students zoned, keyword, zoned for D20 schools. And why is that significant? Because zone means you didn't have to be attending a D20 school, but that you were in the attendance zone of a D20 school. And why is that significant? Because a significant percentage of white families do not send their kids to D20 schools that they are zoned for. So what this in essence did is it gave those families the ability to now petition to get their children into Butte Academy. And why is that significant? Because much of public education and education in general is built upon the notion of status. Status. Where do your kids go to school? And it's the unspoken rule that many white parents will say, I want my kid to go to a high quality school, which I think all parents want their kids to go to a high quality school. But many parents, white parents, also know that they don't have the resources to send their kids to the private schools of note. So they then try to create a private school environment in the public school sector, and that's how we get a Butte Academy, an academic magnet, right? Now, mind you, follow me with this. So this is all mission critical. This is Jarita Postaway. So they literally pulled a switcheroo in the board meeting, and one of the board members asked about it. Chris Collins, if I'm not mistaken, he asked for clarity. I don't agree with Chris Collins on a lot of stuff, but on that, I was in total agreement because he was saying it. And I want to make people aware, because again, I believe in speaking the truth, okay? History matters. And this history is not that long ago. This is 2019 when this is happening, okay? Think about that. This is 4 years ago. All right. This mission critical had the Buste Academy situation. It has some language in there for academic magnitude. Also, it should be noted that when the decision to open up the high quality seats for Buste Academy took place, there was also a decision that a lot of people didn't pay attention to that shifted the K to 2 grades from Buste Academy into Meminger Elementary, right? Meminger was a traditional public school, but as I said earlier, remember I said Meminger became certified as an IB school. So in essence, it had the same curriculum theme as Buste Academy, all right? A lot of people didn't know that. There's a lot of black people who were like, I went to Meminger. You know, there's a housing project that literally is right down the street from Meminger. So Meminger was familiar to many in the black community, right? So at the same time that Buste Academy opened up their high quality seats, right? There was also a decision that basically put the kindergarten through 2nd grade, I believe, into Meminger, which means now Meminger, which had been a traditional public school, was now going to have the same entrance criteria as Buste Academy. This all happened in 2019. This wasn't 10 years ago. This was basically almost a little less than 5, almost 4, right? Because I think December of this year, those board decisions, those board actions were taken. And what I need people to understand, what I need you to understand is that at that time, these actions were also being championed and supported by some in the black community. September of 2019, myself and my fraternity brother Eric Jackson went live to talk about mission critical and all of this stuff. Because at that time, too, again, listen up, that's when the notion and concept of what we now know as the acceleration zone got put into play. Okay? Again, hear me when I say that. The same acceleration zone that exists today was a part of the mission critical agenda. And people like myself and others sound the alarm saying that this agenda is akin to privatization. It's an effort to use privatization under the guise of public-private partnerships. But basically, it was going to be privatization. It was going to open the door even further for companies to come and pilfer the trough of Charleston County School District. Okay? This is 2019, ladies and gentlemen. 2019. December of 2019, to be exact. All right? And myself, and again, Eric Jackson, and a host of others, some of whom are on this live, were sounding the alarm. There were people putting information on social media. There were groups that were formed and pushed. There was pushback, ladies and gentlemen. There were people fighting back against this. But the problem is that there was money also being spent. There were people being paid to, in my opinion, make this palpable to the black community and to other marginalized communities. That was happening. Okay? And the sad reality of all of that is it worked because a lot of these things got passed through. So we come into 2020 and we all know what happened, right? 2020, COVID hit. COVID hit in, let's say, February, March, we start shutting down everything, right? So everybody now is trying to figure out what's going on with this. How will we survive? What will we do? But the people who were pushing this agenda did not. There was a piece of legislation that was being pushed, and it got pushed by our own school district, and it was called the Schools of Innovation. Okay? The Schools of Innovation Bill. Basically, real quick, Schools of Innovation was this concept that was created to allow for school districts to use this designation for one school per district to be a school of innovation, which means they were exempt from some of the requirements of traditional public schools. Things like when you started, the number of certified teachers that you were required to have, reporting mechanisms. All of these were things that this law allowed public schools to have some flexibility with. Why is that significant? I'll tell you. Because during the pandemic, there was a push for this bill. Hold on one moment, guys. All right, nephew. Have a great day, okay? All right, love you. Morning. So, thank you. So, basically, this Schools of Innovation was championed by some high-profile organizations in our community, okay? And some high-profile individuals. There were conversations that were being had with state legislators to convince them, and I'm talking about folks from the Charleston delegation, as well as others, to convince them to support this, because the narrative that was used is we have to do something to save our schools. This narrative of desperation was created to make people feel like unless we did this, things were going to fall apart. All right. So 2020, 2021, Schools of Innovation becomes the focal point, right? You got our current Superintendent Jarita Postlewaite went up there along with other members of the CCSD board to lobby for this law change, right? And it is my belief, my strong belief, that they were lobbying for this because that would give them the legal standing to basically dismantle and parcel out. Because what the law would allow you to do is go from one being the limit in a school district to unlimited schools being able to get this designation. It was literally one letter change in the law. It went from school to schools, plural. And looking back on that, I feel like that was done so that they could make the pathway to privatization easier. All right. Now, mind you, we were dealing with the pandemic. We were dealing with something that many of us had never seen in our lifetimes. So I know a lot of people didn't pay attention to it. Right. Now, also during this time frame, right, when we start talking about racism and what we are seeing now from groups like Moms for Liberty, the budget, and I believe it was either the 2020, I want to say it was the 2020 budget for South Carolina, right? The state budget. That is one of the times where some of the most dangerous actions take place, because legislation that is not popular and is not able to pass through the traditional means, things that folks want, they will put in the budget in the form of a proviso. Why? Because every elected representative up there wants to be able to come back to their districts and say, hey, look, I got y'all this money. Okay? That's what they want to say. So the budget time is arguably one of the most dangerous times for we the people, because that's when all kinds of things get packed in, and most of the time elected officials are just trying to get it passed because that's how we fund our government functions, our departments, all of that. So there's a lot of things that happen. So 2020's budget had a proviso, and I want to say that proviso had two things in it. It's either 2020 or 2021. I'll try to remember. But two things were significant about the budget. The proviso for masks. There was a proviso stating that they were making it where masks could not be mandatory in public schools and public places, public schools. And the other proviso was called the partisanship curriculum proviso. Why is that significant? That proviso is the blueprint for censorship. It could not teach divisive concepts. It's like what you hear about on the media, anti-woke bill. It was an anti-woke bill. So South Carolina, before it became prominent in national politics, already had the equivalent of an anti-woke bill, but it was in the form of a proviso. A proviso is significant because while it is not a bill, it is not a law, it is something that it has to be adhered to until it's either made a full law or removed entirely. So when you look at groups like Moms for Liberty, when you look at the book bans that are happening, when you look at the attacks on socio-emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, all of those are based on this proviso. Again, this is 2020. This is before everybody knew about Moms for Liberty. This is before all of this. Again, I'm walking you forward to the timeline. Charleston County, the reason why this is significant about this proviso, that proviso was put forward, I think, former state rep Lynn Bennett from Charleston was the one who put this together and pushed it forward with the Schools of Innovation bill, right? That was championed by Sean Bennett, who's from the Dorchester, Somerville area, but he's also a part of the Charleston delegation. Senator Sean Bennett, right? So I want you to understand that the mechanism for what we're seeing with what's happening with Charleston County, with Berkeley County, inevitably what's going to be in Dorchester too, was already here, okay? All it was is that somebody got wise enough to come in and put money and push for action. So Monday night, last night, again, if you go back to almost a year ago in Berkeley County, the newly elected board used their first meeting to get rid of the black superintendent, Deion Jackson. And of course, there's always these conversations where people try to bring up after the fact rationales, but they couldn't give you one. They fired the black superintendent and the black district council. Hear me. In Charleston County, okay, the black council for the district has already left because of the work environment, right? Last night, the newly elected black superintendent who has not been on the job 6 months was dismissed. Another black woman, Miss Michelle Simmons, who has been championing the EL curriculum and education and was a phenomenal principal in her own right, which is why she has a central office position. Okay? Basically, were used as sacrificial lambs. Okay? And I want people to understand, because I saw a lot of people last night talking about why. You're asking the wrong question. It is why, but the real question is how? Because the people who can answer the why are the people that I am talking about. Okay? the board. Who is the board talking to? Who has undue influence on this board? That's what you need to ask. Moms for Liberty is not, and I repeat, not the mafia. You need to be asking, why is it that our elected board is listening more so to an extremist group than they are to the constituents? Okay? Dr. Eric Gallion hadn't even had a chance to truly engage with the entirety of our district, and he's been put on leave. It's a black man and a black woman. Also, it should be noted that one of the individuals that is being purported to replace him, Dr. Cherry Nichols, again, this is allegedly. There is some conversations and whatnot floating around about some allegations that she made towards Dr. Gallion, right? And I want people to understand this, and I will say this until I don't have any breath. I am almost 50 years old. I have lived in Charleston, South Carolina for half of my life. So I consider myself a Charlestonian at this particular point. Racism is always going to be alive and well in this city because there are a lot of people who think racism is just using racial slurs, the N-word, and overt, blatant acts of racism. No, racism is sitting by watching what happened last night, and while you make a Facebook post here or there, you don't show up when it matters. Okay? You don't show up when it's needed. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who know who Moms for Liberty members are. They know. But they won't ever say it out loud. They know. It's why I made the post last night about this is on white people. And there's nothing controversial about that. This is on white people. White people have the means and the opportunity to influence local elections. That's why I was so against Coalition for Kids. Because it was white money, not dark money, white money that was being pushed into local elections to determine the outcomes. Okay? It's not dark money, it's white money. Because once again, words matter. You use dark in a negative connotation. No, that money is coming from white people. And if you don't have the courage to say that, then you really don't have the courage for this conversation. And that's why I'm calling this series Uncomfortable Conversations. Yes, sis, I see what you said about Erica Taylor. Yep, another person that was railroaded, out of the district. But CCSD has a history. Let's just be honest. Charleston County School District is a product of Charleston County. Charleston County has a history of taking black people and sacrificing us for the benefit of white folks. They will take black schools, majority black schools, and tell us how much they are failing and how much they need to be turned around. And they will take those schools and then turn around and make them acceptable to white folks. This happens all the time. People don't want to talk about it because there's a lot of people who benefit from it, right? We are literally sitting here watching in real time the equivalent of a lynching happening to Dr. Eric Gallion and Michelle Simmons. That's what's happening. Okay, so for the people who saw what happened yesterday and are outraged, here's the moment of truth. Everybody likes to ask, well, what can I do? What are you willing to do? How uncomfortable are you willing to be? Okay? How uncomfortable are you willing to be? Because I can tell you, if you think you're just going to be able to sit on the sidelines and make a few posts on social media and rah rah rah. No, let me also put this into context. We have municipal elections in November. Trust and believe me, and I said this last night, Moms for Liberty is running candidates. So not only is it going to be that they will be controlling your school board, then they're also going to be potentially having influence on municipal operations. And you know what that means? That means all your programs that benefit poor and minority populations, okay? They're going to have access to the budget. They're going to have access to the information and things that many people don't. So you can sit here and fool yourselves that, oh, well, it's just a bunch of, crazy racist white people on the school board. It's not. It's not. All right? Please understand that. So you need to be vetting every single candidate that's coming before you for city council and mayor. I don't hear nobody asking them what's their stance. And if you don't think that the mayors and city council have any influence on local education, that's the problem. I saw somebody make a post about that last night because somebody asked, where the mayoral candidates and whatnot. And then somebody responded, said, well, municipalities don't really have influence. The person who said that was white. And I vehemently disagree. We vehemently disagree because I know for a fact, that what is happening in education is being supported by elected officials at all levels. Okay? Moms for Liberty has met with the governor, lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the state treasurer, and the superintendent of education. All 5 of those very powerful positions are supporters of Moms for Liberty. So don't sit here and tell me that municipalities don't have any influence on education. Next year is a presidential election year, as well as our entire General Assembly is up for re-election. That means our House of Representatives and our Senate. Somewhere in the neighborhood of about 55 different positions, 55 different seats in the State House, the House in particular, went unopposed last year, 2022. Meaning the person who won it because there was nobody else running against them. Let me say this. There are people who will say, I'm not political. I'm not trying to convince you to be political. But if you complain about what's happening now in CCSD, you had damn well better get political. Okay? Also know this and understand this. These people see you being mad. They see you upset. They read your post online. They know y'all pissed off. But they know y'all, in most cases, they think y'all ain't going to do nothing. They think y'all are only going to sit here and be mad, be upset online. But that's never going to materialize into anything that potentially would push them to do different. If I'm an elected official and I'm looking at the turnout numbers, I'm sitting back, I'm laughing. And some of you may get mad, but I am. I'm laughing. The South Carolina Democratic Party, and I'm going to say this, the school board races are always labeled nonpartisan, right? That's BS. If you don't hear anything else from me, hear this. Nonpartisan is a word that's used to put people at ease, to make them think that an election is going to be fair, that it's going to be based on issues and people and not party. That's BS. That's BS. Republicans don't believe that. They don't believe in nonpartisan. They may never come out and say, yeah, I'm a Republican, but their actions will. Their actions will say it. And Democrats don't even really believe that either. But the problem is you don't have people fighting as hard on the opposite side as you do on the Republican conservative side. is it? How is it that we've got all of these Democrats who sit here, you know, and say they're Democrats, but get in office and start sounding exactly like Republicans? We're watching this around the country. People who come in and they think they say a few buzzwords that sound good, right? And then they start talking like Republicans. We have a 5-4 majority on the CCSD school board, right? A 5-4 majority of Moms for Liberty candidates, because on the opposite side, Democrats don't get involved in public education at any level. They didn't put any money, resources, or anything behind it. That's why it's laughable right now to watch some of the endorsements that I've watched in recent elections, special election, and now with the mayoral. If political capital is not being spent to help us in the community against what's happening, then why do they deserve our support any other time? And that's just a question. I'm not saying don't vote. I'm just saying we need to be more discerning, because I am tired. I am tired of people wanting me to support folks who ain't doing anything in our community. If you don't hear it again, I will say this. I'm a black man who has lived the majority of his life in South Carolina, so I know South Carolina politics. I will never be one of these people that carries water for folks just so I can be in the room. I don't have to be in the room with folks. Those people in those rooms are not in our communities. Okay? That's number one. Number two, our communities need adequate, accessible, and affordable housing. Our people need an educational system that is equitable, inclusive, diverse, efficient, and effective. And we need an economic development strategy that is not built to support and supply businesses exclusively at the expense of the working class and entrepreneurs. I am tired of the chambers of commerce and all these other groups touting their success behind having initiatives that, in my opinion, are only surface. Okay? We need economic development strategies that encourage the economic infrastructure in divested and marginalized communities to be improved for the benefit of those communities, not for the tax breaks and incentives of corporations and companies. When you start listening to politicians, figure out if they're talking about any of the things that I just listed. And if they're not willing to share with you behind the curtain of how things work politically, they don't deserve your vote. There are too many politicians that still have a 20th century mindset. There's a lot of people, because I'm one of them, who had to learn how politics works. But thankfully, I was able to have a conversation with some people who are already elected officials. One of those is one of my dear friends, Crystal Matthews, who would just share with me how things work, because I was confused about what I was seeing and what I was reading. And I want you to know this. Even politicians don't always know how things work. And we are seeing that on a regular basis. So I need you to understand that what people saw last night with CCSD is a direct result of assuming that the people who get elected are going to do right by the people. The 5 Moms for Liberty backed candidates have no allegiance to people who are not affiliated with Moms for Liberty. And that's the bitter truth. And that's what people need to understand. So, before I start my day, here's what you need to do. 1, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself. You need to have a conversation with yourself that says, if you are white, how uncomfortable are you willing to be? Because you're going to have to be uncomfortable. You are going to have to be uncomfortable. How much are you willing to contribute to support and protect Black people and other marginalized people who are already in this fight? Those are two powerful questions that you need to ask yourself, right? So don't come online wringing your hands saying, what can you do? Ask yourself those two questions. And if you answer those two questions with that you're willing to do what's necessary and you're willing to contribute what you can, the next step is make sure you are finding out the work being done, the people doing the work, and listen. Because a lot of people come on to this fight with their opinion, so they're unarmed. You need to be informed, which is why I'm doing this live. I wanted to give people context because there were too many people claiming that they can't understand like what happened last night, how it could happen. No, there's a pattern. There's a history behind that. All right? And stop thinking that attaboys and pats on the back is helping people. I don't know what Michelle Simmons is going through this morning, nor Dr. Eric Gallion, but reach out to them. Reach out to them. Send them an email if you can. Let them know that you support. Do that. Start policing your schools because Moms for Liberty uses their spies and supporters that are currently in our schools. And I said this yesterday and I will say it again. These people are not just on our school board. They're everywhere. And because we are so polite, because we don't want to talk about things that make us uncomfortable, we sit there and allow these people to do what they do, and no one holds anybody accountable. So again, start looking around in your schools. All right? Black people, I need you. I need you who will hear this, who will watch this video, to start asking yourselves the same thing. Because there's some black people who have sold us out. Literally. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. There are black people who have used their proximity to whiteness, their proximity to power, to enrich themselves at our expense. And we need to understand that those people need to be treated the same way we treat Moms for Liberty. Stop trying to save those who have made their bed with white supremacy. And here's something I want everybody to understand, okay? I think a lot of people erroneously think that racism just negatively impacts black people or minorities. No. Black people are definitely the targets of racism, as we see with CCSD. But racism hurts everybody because it gives not the people who are not the targets of racism the erroneous belief that they aren't harmed. This is where we get the notion of white supremacy or white superiority, because there are white people who, again, claim up and down, oh, I'm not racist, but you allow for a racist system to exist and hurt marginalized people because it doesn't hurt you. And while you may think that your proximity to black people helps you not be racist, it's your actions that you take when you're not around black people that will make you not racist. Okay? And one final thing I got to say, because I need people to understand this. I've heard people say, we need to fix this because it's about the children. I understand the sentiment, but I need people to stop saying that. It is not about the children. It's not just about the children. It is about the system. And that system is made up of adults. And those adults are the ones that work and create the environments in which our kids are educated in. It's your teachers, your teacher assistants, your principals and administrators. It's your cafeteria workers. It is your speech pathologists. It's your school counselors. It's your day porters and custodians. It's your student support specialists. It's all of these people who combined create the environment that our kids are educated in, and all of them are valuable. It is your after school and non-traditional school providers, okay? Because again, education is not a one-size-fits-all approach, all right? And I need people to understand that. So stop saying it's just about the kids. It's about all of us. Because these same teachers that so many people have so much smoke for are parents too. And their opinions matter. And I need people to really get serious about this and stop thinking that just because when you drop your kids off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon, they're able to come out of a building. Go inside and figure out what's going on. There are teachers right now who are basically exhausted. There are teachers right now who are being held hostage by parents who are pushing the same agenda that we see these board members pushing. Make sure you are not one of those parents, okay? Not only get out and vote, if you feel like you got something to contribute, run for office. If you don't want to run for office, if you know somebody who is, support them. But let's stop wringing our hands. Let's stop writing think pieces. Let's stop saying it's not me, it's all of us. The knowledge I just shared to y'all this morning on this live is information that other people know. They know. But they ain't gonna say nothing. They ain't gonna say nothing because it means that they then also have to admit that they sat by and watched us get to this point. And that means that they have a level of responsibility for where we are today. Public education. Let me say this in closing. Public education is one of the last things that we can provide our communities, because it's not just our kids, but our communities, to help us get better. As people's minds are shaped for their benefit, okay, not for the benefit of a corporation or a company, but for their benefit, then they're able to become better people and contribute to our society in a meaningful way. One of the things I constantly hear from the Moms for Liberty crowd is, let's go back to basics. The people who sit on your school board now were taught with the basics. You think that's working for us right now? Part 2 in this series is coming soon, and I hope y'all have a good day. Thank you for those of you who stood with me as I got ready for my day. And again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. There's no easy answers. There's no quick fixes, and you shouldn't expect it to be. But most importantly, listen to Black people. Listen to marginalized people, because we know what we're talking about. Support Black people. Support marginalized people. Have a good day.